My guest today is Jesse Bella. Jesse is the CEO and founder at Terrace, an all-in-one trading terminal and portfolio management system for everything and everyone. Looks intriguing indeed. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be here.
Great to have you here, Jesse. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be super cool if you could please introduce yourself. Love to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. Yeah, what is the life path that has led you to founding Terrace?
Absolutely. To give the quick, how do you get into crypto? How the hell do you end up doing this? And how do you end up starting a company, which I think requires a little bit of delusion or delusions of grandeur. I come from a finance family, was involved in principal investing from a pretty early age, primarily on the longer-term investing horizon, traditional assets, etc. Always kind of interesting to me, though, what was coming. And then I grew up in San Francisco. There was rumors of this blockchain type thing that was happening, particularly around Bitcoin. Obviously, we had Coinbase and the like coming through. But I wasn't particularly involved. Honestly, I think Bitcoin's very interesting, but it is a store of value primarily. There's not as much from a technological standpoint. And so it wasn't really until DeFi summer, 2020, 2021, where things got really interesting, the evolution of smart contracts. And for me, the kind of draw in was the opportunity set that existed to improve, frankly, the plumbing of traditional finance, particularly around credit and cross-border payments, less on the kind of public equities equivalent, and what the opportunity was there. At the time, I was working at a tech company, messing around with a few different ideas, had the kind of itch to start something. And frankly, I was personally having the rather painful experience of not being an engineer and trying to interact with DeFi and the crypto world. And I was particularly perturbed by anything CeFi, which we can talk about down the line. You put those together, having spent, 10 plus years using the best of what's available in traditional markets, it felt like, hey, that should probably exist in crypto as well. And when you find a problem that there seems to be a lot of demand for, you feel it quite potently yourself, and some folks are willing to give you money to go after it. Why not start a company?
Yes, look, makes sense to me, Jesse. All right, well, talk us through a little bit of what Terrace is then. So you've identified a little bit of the pain points that I guess you're trying to solve. So maybe just explain that a bit further and explain what Terrace is. Like if you go to the Terrace website, by the way, listeners, which is simply terrace.fi, the first thing you see, Jesse, it says crypto trading is broken for everyone. So a bold statement there. Take it away. Why is crypto trading broken for everyone, and how are you solving this with Terrace?
So look, I think we list 12 to 14 different pain points, but probably worth going after the different components. So the first set is, let's go after what's problematic about CeFi today, the centralized exchange world. Then I think we'll jump into kind of more on the DeFi side. And those will, I think, dovetail nicely into, hey, why does Terrace exist? What are we trying to do? So on the centralized side, it's kind of bizarre. If you think about the original ethos of crypto, it's about decentralization, greater security, being less dependent on potentially malicious centralized entities. And what we've done instead is the vast majority of trading volume now goes through a series of exchanges, which are also custodians, clearinghouses, settlement layers, and brokers, and do have total control over your funds at all times. It's kind of an amazing, almost 100-year step back from where trading public equities or stocks is today or before. And obviously there are some side effects there. We're lucky that we didn't die with FTX as folks who had funds in there. I know there's a lot of folks who unfortunately took a lot of pain there, but it's not like we've solved the issues related to FTX. We're still just hoping that not to smirch any of these, but that the folks at Coinbase or Bybit or OKX or Binance will simply be better actors, right? They're still not particularly regulated. They're still combining all these different functions that traditional regulators have eliminated for 40 plus years now because of the risk that greed presents to that side. So when I think about being broken, if you're particularly an institutional investor, but frankly anyone, to have that level of trust in your counterparty is a bit terrifying. And then on top of that, from a technological perspective, and this is further a bit odd, these centralized exchanges are effectively running early to mid 2000s level tech from traditional public equities. They're about 10 plus years behind when it comes to throughput, latency, things like that, uptime, There's still a lot of them are dependent on WebSockets. You still can't really co-locate with a number of them. I'm getting a little bit more technical, but if you're really trying to do high frequency trading or mid or low, and you want confidence in your execution, it's still not there, right? We just haven't. There's a few venues popping up on a couple of ECNs, which I can mention, who are doing well, but we're still pretty far behind. So when I think broken, let's just start there, right? You have levels of trust and inferior technology. On top of that, you have massive levels of fragmentation at some level when it comes to wallets, accounts, etc. And so actually like executing, and this is maybe something you've gone through, like if you try and trade and you want the best price, there is still not a single place you could go that's going to aggregate all the liquidity across, let's call it 90+% of the market. Still, obviously there's a DeFi CeFi divide, but even within CeFi, that's obviously further compounded if you're in the US like I am, or in certain jurisdictions. But that's just a base level. We've solved that in other markets 20 or 30 years ago, and it's a particularly painful one here. You shift over to DeFi, it's a user experience issue like I've never seen. I know folks have probably gotten, love their wallets in certain ways, but you start thinking about, would you really want to run your entire savings through a single wallet? What happens if you have 10 wallets, which some folks might do? That seems kind of painful. If you think about managing your portfolio or understanding what positions are like, and I can get into some of the more specific pain points, but the one that always struck me as kind of particularly nuts, and I recognize not everyone trades in the same way, is there's historically no position management on-chain or broadly within crypto. And so what does that mean? That's, you don't really know what your actual average entry price is. What did you buy the thing for? If you think about like using a MetaMask or any of those other wallets, you get balances, and your balance goes up or down. So you can kind of see you're up or you're down. And the idea of moving large amounts of money and having no idea what you actually bought the thing for is kind of insane. I mean, I can't really imagine another part of your life where you're like, yeah, I guess the number doesn't really matter. And this is obviously when we're talking about billions, not trillions of dollars. So the goal of Terrace was, hey, what are we used to? What is the quality that exists in traditional finance for institutional investors originally, and now broadly more for retail? And why can't we just have that in crypto? And so we've just gone systematically through to make that happen.
Yep, very, very well explained, Jesse. So just talk us through then how Terrace works. So Terrace, it's like kind of like a dashboard that provides access to, well, you say on the website, 40 plus venues, 13 plus chains, 2 million plus tokens, whatever that means. But yeah, just so please put that into perspective as to, totally. I guess, how Terrace works and what you have access to in terms of that, I guess, one Definitely. Terminal.
Yeah, so I would think about it like there's a few terms that crypto does a very good job of coming up with, I think, more palatable, understandable terms to the layman that we've had in traditional markets for a long time. And one of them is this concept of, like, we've basically stopped using the term broker and replaced it with 10 different other terms. Terrace is fundamentally a broker. What does that mean? We are your single point of entry where you get, whether it's direct market access, so I get to pick the venue and I can trade on that venue, or multi-venue kind of aggregated liquidity across a variety of different venues. But you need one account. So you log into Terrace, you have your portfolio management system, so you can see everything you own, a few different nice little graphs, charts, views of it by wallet, by chain, and we're multi-wallet, multi-chain. You can have as many as you want, actually. At least some people go a little crazy on that front. And through that that's your portfolio management system. And then we have trading in two ways. First one is kind of a classic exchange, like, hey, here's an A for B pair, here's your full order book, here's your order types, etc. And then you have what we call Pathfinder, which is our anything to anything cross-chain engine. When you think about what these things are doing, is at the base level, we are directly integrated with, as you read out, like 40 plus different venues. It grows every day, frankly. If you're someone who's on the more on the DeFi side, I think it's like 800,000 pools where we have integrated directly. We have algorithms that route you to get the best price with MEV protection, with every major trade type you could be used to. That's the base layer. And then on top of that, because we have that data feed, basically, of all of your trades, we can construct for you, here's your portfolio at any given time, here's your positions, here's your returns, here's your entire trading history, and here's where you can actually trade. So I think the easiest example is, on the one hand, in crypto, I would say, like, it's just like logging into your Binance or OKX or Coinbase account, except you get all of those venues and all of DeFi in one place. Use a traditional finance one, and this might be more limited to Americans, and I apologize for that, but if you log into your Fidelity account, or your E-Trade or your Robinhood, that's got everything you need in one place. You never spend any time thinking about where they're actually executing those trades. That's all just taking care of it for you. And that's the same concept there.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Just you mentioned Pathfinder, and I've seen a little bit of talk about this. Sounds particularly interesting. So I think the idea with Pathfinder is is it an algorithm? It identifies and executes the optimal path across a selection of chains and tokens, given whatever the user is trying to execute, but makes it much simpler process than the terrifying old school DeFi way would be, Jesse.
Yes, and as someone who's lost a fair bit of money on the terrifying old DeFi one, this was definitely one for me. The way I think about it is, you want to get from any token on any chain that we support to any other token on any other chain we support. We search a graph we create of tens of billion potential paths, not just, X for ETH, bridge ETH, or whatever. It's actually what's the best path within each of those chains or multiple chains. But we actually find the ideal route. We actually give you a few different options, if it makes sense. And then we can just select execute, and we take care of the rest of it. So, I think there's a few different iterations or versions of this that are out there. We haven't seen one that's quite as comprehensive when it comes to chains, especially the actual smart routing part, which is this algorithm, the sheer number of paths that we're evaluating in a single place. And so that's the kind of goal, is you should never have to do. I think the example we always give internally is, if you try and go from something like name your rand, let's go Toncoin, and you wanted to get to, I don't know, E, which is a delightful new meme coin on Base. The number of steps it takes to actually get that right, the amount of time it takes, and the risk that you actually put the wrong contract in somewhere is just crazy high. And again, we start with, for institutions, none of them would tolerate that. But that's not an institutional problem, that's an everyone problem. And so the goal of the Pathfinder really is solve that. Make your life easy. You should be figuring out how to make money. You shouldn't have to worry about anything else.
100%. Thank you, Jesse. Also, interestingly, I think it's you guys offer a non-KYC DeFi-only option, and of course, the more KYC-enabled option for, the much access to more, centralized exchanges, market makers, and so on and so forth. Is that sort of how you characterize it?
Yeah.
And also just explain, a lot of people listening to this will be American, but there are people all around the world as well. Just any restrictions or in terms of how that works jurisdictional wise?
Definitely. So look, the idea was we want to meet people where they are. There's folks who, let's be charitable for good reasons, have no desire to KYC. Fine. We're happy to deliver a platform for you. That is the kind of base platform. Don't have to do anything. You put a username and an email in, hands off. Obviously, there's restrictions if you're in an OPEC sanctioned country. So Iran, North Korea, Russia, Cuba, it's going to be limited. But otherwise, you can use the US, you can use it basically anywhere. And then there's the more, as you said, the broader option. So where you get that access to centralized liquidity. So you get deep liquidity, typically comparable, if not better pricing as well. And not just for regulatory reasons in almost every market, as well as the terms and conditions of those underlying exchanges. And we have to verify your identity. So what I will say, if you're asking about the question of availability, really it comes down to two things. One, does wherever you're based, do they allow derivatives trading? Which for most of the world is yes. And the United States is, with the exception of CME options, no, broadly. And so if you're in the US, unfortunately, no perps or derivatives for you. And then the second one is, do you have direct market access? Which basically means, can you decide, Andy, and this is more of an API, high frequency trading piece, but you could decide today, hey, I see the price on Binance and I see the price on Uni, and I want to arbitrage those myself. Because we're your counterparty, you can be the direct, you basically don't need to have your own accounts. That's what we call direct market access versus an aggregated liquidity, where it's just a stream that combines everything, but you don't know where it's getting routed. We can get into the details, but basically in the United States and a few other markets, but not that many, you cannot have direct market access to offshore exchanges. And so we don't provide that. But if you're where you're based, David. But if you're not in the US, it should be fine. And you can see the individual venues. It's kind of fun sometimes to see what the arbitrage is, how it's working. I will say as a disclaimer, and it's not financial advice, don't try and compete with your fingers versus the folks using the fastest machines on Earth. You tend to lose.
Not financial advice, but that is great advice, Jesse. Yes, very well said. Tell us, what is the status of Terrace in terms of, is this live? Is it in beta? Is it live for a select people? Because I see, if I try and join now, it says, it puts me through to a wait list. So just explain how that is working, Jesse.
Absolutely. So we launched our live beta last month. It's a pretty restricted group. That's going to start opening up pretty soon. I'll send you an invite after it's fully working. There's been plenty of volume and some folks trying to race with their fingers. We'll move to kind of a larger invite-only period in the next few weeks. And really, it's going from there. General availability at some point late September, probably in October. And if you want an invite code, you can always shoot me a note on Twitter or hit us up. We're very big believers in safety and security, kind of on all fronts. And I think we've all seen, particularly in the crypto world, applications that just break because they aren't ready to scale. And so we're pretty adamant about kind of hitting everything on the checklist. And so we have a group of funds that are in our beta. We have a group of individuals, more whale, degen side. Quite interesting to see their different trading habits. And over time, we plan to kind of expand access.
Very nice. Talk to us, Jesse, in terms of the people backing you here. So you can see some of the names, Hashkey Group, Soma Capital, Hack VC, Mischief, and YCombinator. Some reasonably heavyweight, well-known names. Obviously, that would be gratifying in terms of giving you support, runway, resource, all that good stuff.
They certainly going to give us capital. Say that.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we were in Y Combinator in summer 2022. For those who don't know, YC is, I think, probably the most successful seed incubator in tech broadly. It's also the original home of Coinbase, first check into Coinbase, first check into OpenSea,
and Sam Altman, of course.
And Sam Altman, I was the former president. So it's quite an illustrious organization, and we're flattered they had us in our batch a couple of years ago, and we've been building since then. It's been interesting to watch their experience with crypto kind of go in and out and kind of see what's interesting, what's not. Obviously, two of the biggest companies in crypto came out of them, so they know what they're doing. And there's a few others who have come out as well, but they're more generalized VC by any measure. Hack actually led our seed round. We think of them as kind of probably the most, at this point, from a token perspective, the most successful early stage VC, I think, in the space. There's strictly too many names to count, although the one that we're really excited about is Barra for them, or they're probably more excited than I am. I don't get any Barry. Although maybe they'll send that over after. But no, we really went after having kind of a mix of heavyweight traditional venture folks and the crypto native, because I think at our core, we fundamentally believe that crypto has to grow beyond just like what it is today, right? It has to be something that bridges traditional and non-traditional finance, that is Web 2 and Web 3. It's kind of evolution. And our view is you need people on both sides, right? If you think about, you show here, Andy, like I'll send you a code after you sign up to Terrace, having used DeFi, you'll be like, oh, I understand intuitively what most of these things mean. Most of the words mean. But if I send it to, my mother, who has never spent a single moment in this space and has no idea what I'm talking about, I kind of need to figure out a way to make sure that it's something palatable for her, because she's got a retirement account. And if you fundamentally eventually believe that most things should run on blockchain rails, it's got to be acceptable and palatable both. And fundamentally, that is our challenge as a user experience, to make sure that everyone can experience it, understand it. And not that they're terrified of everything from seed phrases to wallets to, things named after unicorns.
Yep. And look, Jesse, I think that's a nice segue into, love to just get maybe some broader perspectives from you in terms of, state of crypto, state of DeFi markets, however you want to phrase it, like thinking of, you kind of said it yourself, you became interested in crypto sort of around DeFi summer, and then maybe did Y Combinator. soon after. And I imagine there was a much higher level on terms of all things DeFi, blockchain, crypto tokens, whatever, at YCombinator at that time. Whereas I don't think that same interest would be there today. It's kind of switched, obviously, to generative AI, and maybe it'll switch again. But just, you know what I'm saying. So I just, yeah, like, that where do we get that next wave of adoption, if you like, even let alone kind of reaching your mum, God bless her, but how do we just get the young savvy people who are kind of being burnt by crypto, and how do we bring them back?
Great question. And I said on the YC one, just to give you an example, I think my class at YCombinator had maybe 20 or 30 different crypto-oriented companies. I checked actually earlier today. I think we're down to 3, and I think half of them pivoted to Gen AI.
Yeah.
So, it happens. Look, like, I think crypto is an interesting space. Like, there's a piece of underlying technology, or a series of pieces of underlying technology, that I at least firmly still believe will probably be the plumbing for a lot of the financial system over the next 10 or 20 years. But it's a kind of an odd world where you could compare it at some level to the advent and development of cloud computing and AWS, et cetera. AWS took 15 years to actually become what it is today. And no one really got rich on AWS, for lack of a better term, until 5 or 10 years in. And what happened with crypto, because of tokenization, the ICOs, and particularly like the beauty of low interest rates, plus stimulus checks, is a whole bunch of people built stuff that didn't really get wide adoption or didn't necessarily solve problems, but made a ton of money. And so it's kind of thrown out of whack our perception of, like, well, how long does it take for something to actually become global scale? And what is required to become global scale? And so, I mean, to answer your question, like, what do I think brings back for crypto? It's hard for me not to say low interest rates. And generally, for what it's worth, markets are quieter pre-election, or U.S. elections. It's just a scary moment. You don't know what things could happen. And so people tend to go risk off. So I think those will probably be your primary drivers, plus some kind of whatever the next social craze is, to at least bring material volumes back to crypto. Like, I do think that's what gives you the bull markets, for the broader market. But in terms of longer term, and this is something we think about with Terrace, is kind of our Terrace 2030 plan, is you need real world use cases where you don't realize that you're using a blockchain. Like, that at some level is secondary. And if you think about what really is amazing about decentralization and blockchain technology, and let's call it tokenization, at this point it's cross-border anything, is the really big difference, right? And you've seen that with the kind of dominance of stablecoins, which I think you can make a great compelling case, are like the most globally adopted version of crypto. But I think that's the kind of the first innings of breaking down global barriers as it relates to trade, investing, et cetera, and kind of democratizing access via these less restricted, for lack of a better term, networks. And so when I think about how do you get crypto, how do I get my mother in here, it's actually getting to a world where doing the same things as before, it's just running on a different set of tech. And I think that's what we're building towards. We really look at that from how can you provide access to global financial markets to anyone in the world, which is really, for American listeners, this might seem bizarre, but like the vast majority of the world actually can't buy Apple or any U.S. stock directly. They can't buy U.S. Treasury, and as a result, they've missed out on the greatest financial returns of any market ever for the last 50 years. And so I think about that as kind of base level. We should be able to break down this barrier and allow anyone in any market, within reason, to buy the same things that any American could buy. And that to me is like that first level, and then one where the technology and the tokenization component really differentiate. And so when I think about longer term, how do you get the next wave? How do you get the excitement? It's having that happen. So it's not, hey, I'm building a crypto thing. It's I'm building X, but it happens to use.
Yeah, great points. Jesse, very much agree with your perspectives there. You said, you mentioned the US election coming up, and the sort of, there's, I guess, let's just say there's always volatility, maybe before, around, and after a US presidential election, not just in markets, but in society, in the culture wars, the whole 9 yards. I did notice in your bio, Jesse, you know what I'm going to say.
Yes, I do. I'm impressed. It's a long way down.
Yes, in 2017, it says that you served as an intern in the United States Senate, which is amazing. but you worked in the office of Senator Kamala D. Harris, who, of course, is now, a leading presidential candidate. Look, I don't necessarily want to get too political on you, but just interested in your perspectives on that time working in the Senate. And what do you think of this kind of the election and the kind of the push and pull? Crypto is it's a minor talking point, but it's much more of a talking point than it has ever been in a presidential cycle, Jesse.
So just to give the quick version, so I was actually her first ever intern.
Wow.
Because she just got elected. I was actually meant to work in a different part of the government, but it was Donald Trump's first time in office, and actually his first decree was a complete hiring freeze across the entire government, which amazingly applied to unpaid interns. And so I lost my internship, and I'm a Californian, and so I had 100 resumes that I went, or more than 100. I went to every single California representative, starting with the ones who were new, so we didn't have staff, until someone took me, and it's very kind of Senator Harris's staff to take me in. Look, I think to keep it focused more on the crypto side, I have obviously political views of my own, and those at some level matter. On the crypto side, look, money talks. We put more, as an industry, we put hundreds of millions of dollars in, and that's clearly having an impact. I think the part that's unclear is how many voters does it actually matter to? Will it actually swing any elections? Right now, it's money, which leads to ads, and the promise of, hey, there's 10 or 20 million Americans or more who will decide their vote on this. I don't know. We'll see. In terms of kind of the impact, I think there's a bit of it over, not much. The whole point of the U.S. system is gridlock. I saw this firsthand, right?
Yeah.
So, really, this is, do you think that if elected, Trump would replace Gensler with someone significantly more favorable? Maybe. Probably, maybe. If elected, do you think Harris will replace Gensler with someone significantly more favorable? Maybe, maybe not. But I would say even with a Gensler out there, we've got ETFs for BTC and ETH. We've got plenty of other things coming. No matter who's put out there, it's not like Binance is going to be legal in the U.S. anytime soon. That's a whole separate thing. And so I kind of look at it as the market will react insanely, as it always does. But it probably doesn't really move the needle one way or another. And just to give you a sense of timelines, to replace the SEC chairman takes probably 3 to 6 months after the election. So that's January plus 3 to 6 months of 2025. Then they have to decide to kill cases or not kill cases and do some rulings. And maybe crypto's top of mind, but realistically, probably not. So, this isn't really a short-term impact. But then again, if you're trying to profit off the market in the short term, there'll probably be some kind of volatility.
Yeah, very well said. But I just have to ask, Jesse, it sounds like you were randomly assigned to Senator Harris, but you've probably seen her.
No, I went door to door.
Right. Okay. Was she the first one that said yes?
Yeah, basically, so literally, I had this job elsewhere. I was working for the International Development Bank, which is a part of that does kind of loans and such for the U.S. And I was going into my first day, and the first presidential act of Donald Trump's first presidency was no hiring. And so they said, I'm so sorry, but even though we were never going to pay you, you actually can't work here. And so I had to go find another internship. And the people who have no staff are the brand new ones. And so I'm from California. I'm from Northern California, from San Francisco. Kamala Harris is from Oakland, which is across the bay. Felt maybe they'd be receptive, and they were delighted. They're like, yes, we have absolutely no one here.
Yeah.
Please just answer the phones.
And what were your impressions of her while you were there?
Look, I think she's a fantastic prosecutor. I think she has, at some level, a very specific view on the opportunities that should exist for all Americans. And I think really I'd emphasize all Americans there. And she has, it's an interesting debate of, is she tough on crime? Is she not tough on crime? And I would argue her history is that she's fairly tough on crime, and particularly anyone who's committing white collar, which obviously has some meaning in this election debate coming up. But in particular, I think is how I would think about her generally, right? She's a principled person. She's very focused on providing opportunity to as many people as possible. And I think that was reflected in how she acted in the Senate, how she's acted, frankly, as vice president and beyond. what do you learn over the course of 4 months of being the lowest person in the possible office over whether your boss's 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 boss is going to be a great president? Idea. Without laying on my exact vote. It was good to work for her. Yeah, at high standard.
Okay, well, look, really appreciate you sharing your observations there, Jesse. Thank you so much. Before we finish off the podcast with the very famous crypto conversation hot take round, please just once again make the case for Terrace, what it is, why people should look at it, and how they should do so. What do they need to do to go and get involved, sign up for the waitlist, and so on?
Definitely. Look, I think at the end of the day, Terrace is your one-stop shop. We believe that there should be a single broker that you go to that gets you the best prices, that shows you everything you need to know about your portfolio, every trade, every opportunity, and makes it just easy so you can focus on making money, and we'll handle the rest. And that is the point of Terrace, whether you are day one in the space or you are a professional investor managing third-party capital, or maybe, God bless, your own 7, 8, 9 figures of capital. We think Terrace is the best place for you. In terms of getting access, Andy, I think we'll talk after. We'll give people a few sign-up codes if you want to join the beta. You can also always hit us up on Twitter, or if not, join the waitlist. And we do reward folks who are early on there. I think there's 5,000 or 10,000 people now there, if not more. But we can always move you up and give you an account. We love feedback. The only way to get better.
Awesome. Link is in the show notes, folks. But of course, just terrace.fi. Time to finish up the show. And Jesse, we're going to do that by running you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Delighted.
Just going to run some questions at you, Jesse. Just want to give you, just give us your honest hot take style answers. Question one for you, a bit of a funny one, but where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Well, I would put myself in the middle. I am absolutely not a Bitcoin maxi, but I also think there's too many chains, which is part of why Terrace exists. So I think right in the middle. I think we need a few chains, and one of them, BTC, probably shouldn't be one.
Yep, makes sense. All right. Jesse, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
I fundamentally believe that people will continue to speculate on crypto.
Yeah, easy as that, and hard not to agree. All right. Bill Gates famously said, Jesse, that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. Coming out of YCombinator, you'd be very familiar with that kind of thinking. So anything you like here, Terrace, DeFi, crypto, trading, markets, AI, what does it all look like in 10 years' time?
I'll leave the AI to people who are substantially more knowledgeable on that front. But hopefully I'll still have a job. Is basically where I look. I think on crypto, there will continue to be this, for lack of a better term, casino. And that has some negative connotations, but whether that's memes, something like that, where there's a kind of aggressively speculative, volatile component of the industry. One which I think we see at the same level in options trading, by the way, on traditional equities. And you've seen throughout. That'll still be around. But I do think in 10 years, you're going to start being kind of more material traditional finance elements. Probably not public equities. Probably things that most investors don't touch, sitting on blockchains. And it won't necessarily be publicized to start. It probably won't be publicized to start because people are afraid of the negative connotation that exists right now. But I think in 10 years, you'll really start to see material dollar volumes of global trade and settlement, of credit issuance, maintenance, etc., happening on public or private blockchains.
Yeah.
And so that's why I look at it kind of 10 years from now. 10 years is a long time.
It certainly is. Nicely said, though, Jesse. Thank you for that. Sci-fi author William Gibson famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, Jesse, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
So I will actually use the AI one. I was at my sister's wedding this weekend, and a longtime friend of hers, is now, let's call it, mid to senior person at OpenAI. And they pulled out their phone and they walked me through kind of what is there in beta for them. So not publicly available. They've done a few demos, but it's not the full ability. And I don't think people quite realize how much better it is at languages and talking and that's just the next iteration. And to say that's not evenly distributed, it's not available publicly. Actually, it's available to a select group of people. And I think what we'll see and continue to see is that kind of lack of equal distribution when it comes to quality machine learning based tooling, where there's always going to be a lag between a select few and the masses getting access. And over time, that's going to get scary.
Yeah, I agree. Are you kind of talking about the voice mode that they demoed like months and months ago, and they said,
yes.
we're going to release it, and then they said, well, actually, we're going to delay it. So,
yes, exactly. So voice mode, and then some of the more, let's call it, features that they can some of the additional features that I don't think they demoed there are pretty remarkable. And they are ones where you can take someone who goes, I don't know, ChatGPT just made us all a bit dumber, and go, actually, no, this is pretty remarkable. And then you get to hear them say, well, actually, we're at the very beginning of this game, which makes it all a bit more terrifying.
Terrifying is indeed an accurate way to describe it. Exciting as well.
Yes, both.
Jesse, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It has been terrifying and exciting and a lot of fun to have you here. Please, again, just close it out by, once again, just shouting out Terrace, your social profiles, your X handle, wherever else you like to hang out online. Go for gold.
Definitely. You can follow us at Terrace_FI on Twitter. You can find me at Jesse Beller, or you can go on our website, www.terrace.fi. We're around all those, most active there. If you somehow find my Telegram, well done. You get brownie points. But otherwise, come sign up, come give us a spin. We think you'll be surprised and delighted. And if we're not, we'd love to hear why so we can make it better.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. All the best, and bye for now.
Thanks.